Hello, everyone. My name is Faz. Once again, here as part of Nintendo Players UK, and I haven't said it the last few times we did these interviews, but the reason why we've been talking with so many of the Legend of Zelda voice actresses is because we are celebrating the 1 year anniversary of the Nintendo Switch and Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And what a way to cap it off by speaking with Princess Zelda herself, Patricia Summersett. How are you today?
I'm great, Vaz. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So we'll get straight into it. Sorry, before I forget, how was your year?
Oh, wow. My year has been one of the most, I would say, extraordinarily adventurous years that I could have. And I say that as an actor, so that's kind of fun. I've done a lot of travel. I've met a lot of amazing people around the world in places that I didn't think I would go. And a big part of that is due to the game. So it's been extraordinary in a lot of ways.
Also, happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you.
I do find it a little, I feel it's too, maybe it was fated that you were playing Zelda, especially considering when it came out.
It was pretty close to my birthday, and that was, I thought that it was a nice gift. I was like, oh, March, well, what do you know? Birthday month, yeah. True that.
We'll get straight into it. First question I normally ask, I've asked this to the other voice actors, and they've kind of already explained to me like how the whole things work. But just in case for those who may be coming in the first time, how often do you get to actually interact with some of the other voice actors in real life? Have you had a chance to meet them?
I have, actually. We had a party afterwards, after the game had come out. And so I was able to meet, I've met Sean Chiplock, Rivali, Joe Hernandez, who's Daruk. Who else? The King, my father. Oh my gosh, I'm now blanking. Bill. Amelia Gotham, of course, Mifa, and I'd say the biggest surprise out of meeting everybody was how close Elizabeth, Maxwell, and I became. We're now quite good friends. And I was actually just staying at her house last week in Texas when I was down there for South by Southwest. I was like crashing at her place. And we make it to cons every once in a while together. So that's always a really lovely adventure when I get to go with Elizabeth. She's the bomb. She's really awesome.
When taking on the role, what sort of mindset did you take for Zelda?
When I auditioned for the role, it ended up being that a lot of the stuff that I'd prepared to pitch for an audition was the kind of thing that they found was the right sensibility for what they had desired for the aesthetic of it. So that was based on a description of, on the audition, it was kind of a generic, but the themes were the same, related to like, she was royalty, she was young, but old. They had a kind of like fluid age involved. She had a lot of pressure on her. She had a complicated relationship with her father. These things that they were all sort of, indicators in the audition. And so I went in and pitched something. As far as like the mindset that I took, I came to the work in terms of taking some backstory, once I figured out what it was, because it was quite close to the recording when I actually realized what I was recording. I didn't know what it was until like right up until that moment. I come to things as a theater actor, if I would put it really simply. So I call on my acting training and I go from there and I examine a script of like what a character needs, what the context is, what the environment is, what are her relationships with her family and her friends, and what does she absolutely need. I come to it from that, from a place of what needs to be done right now for this character.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a really long-winded answer. We could do that again if you.
It's completely fine. I like the more candid. I like it. It's better this way. We get to know more about you and the type of person you are. So I'm fine with this.
All right.
I'm sure the fans will as well. With that being said, when did you face any challenges with this particular character, with Zelda?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think with any role, you have restrictions and boundaries that you have to work within. With this particular one, I can say that after I discovered what it was and before I was recording it, I suddenly felt a heck of a lot of pressure to, do it well. And also I knew the sort of history that was involved and the kind of classicness or the iconicness of it. But a lot of those decisions had been made already, really, like about sort of again, like the sensibility and aesthetic of what they had wanted. So I was able to sort of calm down while we were, doing the work and just get to work, which is, always key. But it was a challenge. I'd say like in general, the pressure of doing such a large role where people have such a vast amount of different expectations for it, of like what it's going to sound like, what the story is going to be, if there's even a voice at all, before it came out. So that was interesting with this one in a way that I hadn't experienced before, voicing something that already exists but hasn't been voiced, officially or something.
Were you nervous?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was nervous, totally. I mean, to some degree you get over that because you're in a really supportive room, and the room I was working in was really supportive. It was awesome. It was a really lovely group of people. But of course I was nervous because I really wanted to do well. Absolutely. And the recording sessions felt pretty sacred. Like all of them they felt a little bit magical. I don't know what the other cast members have said. I imagine we were all feeling very much the same way. But, yeah.
Well, we'll get to that. What was the transition like going from the main game to the DLC?
I would say pretty smooth. By that point, the game had already been out for several months. We'd already been out in the world and the public. And when we knew that the DLC was coming and we were called back for it, it was fun. It felt actually a bit like a reunion. And it was easier the second time round just because all the decisions had been made and settled upon. So you already know what you're working with.
Okay. Right, so at the time of this recording, it has been a few weeks since a certain game had been announced at a Nintendo Direct, and by that name is Super Smash Brothers.
Right.
Would you like to see your version of Zelda in the game?
I mean, sure, if that was Nintendo's vision. I'm generally pretty kind of neutral about those things because they're sort of not my my vision or opinion to make, really.
Yeah.
But and I saw that there was like that teaser for Link, and I was like, ooh, that looks fun. But yeah, sure, why not?
All right, we'll get straight into the fan questions then. So Lydia Sian asks, where is Zelda's accent from?
Zelda's accent is from my imagination. While I was preparing the audition, and I saw that in the description it said UK-based and fantasy-based accents. And so how I interpreted that was like, something that sounds in the realm of Game of Thrones, or maybe a little bit of Emma Watson in there, or but mostly just RP, received pronunciation, which I consider to be a sort of neutralized sound, meaning that it's not from one region or another. It just is sort of a general sort of like educated sound because she's from royal family, and so she would have a little bit of that. So that's how I prepared it, using a couple of references and also using what I learned studying in London.
Okay.
Does that make sense? How's that one?
Sense. It makes sense. It makes sense. Would you mind expanding upon the process as to how you came up with the voice?
As I said, I went with a descriptor that was on the audition, for example. And when I thought of UK accents, I thought one of the only ones that I think that she would probably, like, unless it was going to be something really obscure like Hylian, which I was like full on. I ended up learning how to write it, but there is no sort of verbalized Hylian that you can sort of speak at length. But I wondered if that was something that might come up. But just because it was UK-based, fantasy-based, usually what you get is a sort of version of like a received pronunciation. What is received pronunciation? I guess when we speak in acting terms, we just say RP, or like there's RP and there's heightened RP, and heightened RP would be like sounds of a queen, and RP would be just sort of like a more sort of upper class educated British sound that you'd hear on like the BBC or something else when people are doing sort of a general sounds of like local British before you get into anything too regional, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I used some references of real people. I did use some, gotta be careful when I say that, but like I used a little bit of Emma Watson. a little bit of Kate Winslet when I was prepping, just for certain musics that I found that I liked. And then from there, I had the text a bit in advance, and I trained it with a British friend of mine who I studied with in London and who happens to be an actor in LA.
Oh, okay. Was it difficult to put that accent together for you initially?
Well, there were a lot of questions about everything initially, just in terms of like where the tone of voice is going to sit exactly, what I'm going to get directed into based on what I've offered. And then also, how do things fit into a dubbed line? So it's like you have one meaning entirely in Japanese, and then you have to dub it over and breathe life into it in an entirely different language and music with the same lip flaps. So it's like all that stuff ends up getting adjusted in the room. A lot of those things end up getting adjusted because of what needs to happen technically. So you do a certain amount of prep, and then at some point you have to let that go and kind of go with what is happening in the room.
Oh, okay. So that's very interesting to know, and I'm sure the insight the fans will appreciate more of the technical side of building a voice for a game, especially for someone like Zelda. But speaking of Zelda, we have to talk about Link. And Richard Stoke asks, if Nintendo were to ever give Link a voice, which is extremely unlikely, to be fair, who do you think would be an ideal role for that voice? Currently, in Breath of the Wild, he is voiced by Kengo Tanahashi. But who do you think would be a good counterpart for Zelda in this case?
Oh my gosh.
To voice as Link.
You mean like for an English dub?
Yeah, if he were ever to have a voice. I mean, he
Yeah.
has had a voice before, way back when in the 80s, but that was for a TV show, and it was a lot of people
Don't talk
have
about
their
that,
feelings.
right? They say we don't talk about that. I've heard that one. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's the one.
Excuse me, princess. Yeah. Gosh, that is... I have to find an answer to that question because I really don't know. I don't know. I would imagine one of my friends doing it. It's hard to imagine him with a voice, to be honest.
It is.
Like, I actually don't know what I would like to hear. Formed sentences. What kind of voice I would be. I actually don't have one. It's so funny. There's nothing that like springs to mind where I go, oh, that person would voice that. So I'm sure a lot of people could, but yeah, I don't have an answer to that one.
It's fine. We'll leave it to the fans.
Leave it to sleepless nights. Yeah, I'm not gonna sleep for like a week now thinking about this.
Wow, we've broken Patricia. Well done us. Well done, Richard. With that being said, Charlie Way asks, what made you start voice acting?
Voice acting was something that always, I think from a very young age, I had a natural inclination to explore. So I grew up with 3 sisters, and we all did a lot of singing and jingling around when we were younger. And I always did some version of drama. I was an ice skater for a long time. And then I explored theater for the first time in high school, but the first theater that I explored ended up being musicals. And I've never considered myself a musical theater person really at all. I mean, good musical theater is wonderful, but I've always really enjoyed exploring voices, accents, jingles. Like I was always just a little parrot. So when it came to my undergrad, when I was pursuing theater, I had a voice class, and it was the first time that I realized that you could actually do this for a job and get paid for it. And it was an actual profession where people branched off from acting. And I was just riveted by the idea right away and started to pursue it right away, actually. Made my first demos in school and then just started submitting them, which led to radio ads and my first indie games, which eventually led to me working with Ubisoft several times and eventually to move to LA. So I was a voice actor for 10 years before the Zelda thing happened.
Oh, wow. Well, we hope to see you in future games then.
Oh, thank you, Faz.
Here's to another 10 years.
Yeah.
Neve asks, who is your favorite character and why in Zelda specifically? And if you do want to expand that out to any character, I've asked this with the other voice actors as well, please do so.
I was gonna say it's a toss up between I really like I really like the Great Fairies. I love I just get so much pleasure out of so I like in general I like Gorons, fairies, and Koroks. I mean, who doesn't? But I do a lot of imitating those in the privacy of my living room with my partner. We do a lot of like ahs or oh going around doing like they just pop out every once in a while. So probably those, but I would say definitely of the champions. I would say probably Urbosa is kind of I'm just like partial to her because I also really like her in real life, and she's just such a badass looking character, and I feel a kinship with her. Even during recording as Zelda, I felt a kinship with Elizabeth's character and the way that she was a protector, and then getting to know her was super cool. So probably her. She
told us about the cat story, by the way. Do you know that one?
Like wait, were her Oh, when I was staying at her house and her cat was sleeping on my face? That one or a different one?
A different one. I didn't know anything about that one.
She has a very cuddly cat at home, and I spent a couple of nights with her cat, and she was like, "I'm warning you, the cat's very cuddly." And I was like, "All good." And I wake up and the cat's like, it's like in my face, which which is delightful, but I don't have a cat at home, so I was like, "Whoa."
You'll have to listen to the Elizabeth Maxwell interview for that one.
Oh no, which one is it? Is this like, okay, this isn't a cat named Zelda. Which one is this? Oh no.
It's not a cat name. It was more to do with the performance. So don't worry. It's not to do with an actual cat.
All right.
Oh god, I was not expecting that at all. Okay, sorry.
You never know what's going to happen when you're talking about. Anyway. Mm-hmm.
Right, I gotta ask this one because Joseph Robinson asks, my son, who has beaten Breath of the Wild, is 7, and he wants to know.
Congratulations.
He wants to know what your favorite memory in the game is. His is the Yiga Clan one.
Ah, right. I mean, of the ones that I am in, it's hard to choose favorites. Except that I really enjoyed. I'm a big Frog fan in real life, so that's definitely a thing. I felt a lot of kinship when doing that particular memory, and I'd say the most sort of powerful one to do was the one, without giving away too much spoilers, I guess, where she sort of comes into herself in a very intense moment, and realizes that she's powerful. And it's going to all work out for a moment there. That one to me was extraordinary to do and extraordinary to be in the room doing and watching and recording with everybody. There was music. It was great.
I think we're coming up to our last few questions. And Bryony Baxter asks, when you voice different performances each day, how do you mentally switch to each character? I have a cup of tea because that's the Yorkshire thing to do.
Because she switches from various characters because she's a voice actor?
Oh, no. For her, when she's trying to deal with many different things in life, she
okay.
deals
I
with
was
things
like,
by having a
maybe.
Yorkshire tea.
It's like, I'd probably have a cup of coffee, I guess, to cleanse my palate. I guess it depends on if it's a character that you've already established and you're going back to, or if it's a character that you're developing. For example, like right now, I'm working on an audition today where I have to memorize 3 scenes for a character that I have no idea what it is, but it's going to be for a video game and might involve being a monster. So I reread the text over and over again and sort of walk around with it and put it into my physicality. And then I find playful offshoots that I would find interesting and fun to do. And then I'll sort of build them back in, and eventually I'll build what feels like some sort of cohesive world that I'm working in, if that makes any sense. And I think a sort of voice and maybe an accent will come from that. So that's one way of, I guess, getting in. But if I've established a character already and I have to go to another one, part of that ends up being very technical, kind of like doing music where you find where it sits in your head already, where the vibrations sit in your head. and you pitch back there. Sometimes if you use a phrase or a gesture to put with a character, to sort of get back into it, like one phrase that you really think that character likes to say or that really fits the music of that character, that can help. If you have to switch quickly, for example, if you have to do like 3 in a session, which that happens sometimes, you're doing like 3 characters in one voice session and they're like, okay, and the next one, and you have like a minute to sort of get your mouth around it, or even less sometimes, and then start into that new character. I like sometimes technical cues help you as you're sort of coming back around into it. If that makes any sense. It's a good question. It's a hard one to answer actually. But yeah.
I guess it's because there's so many different ways you could handle it.
Right. Yeah. But it is a good question. It's a very interesting. It's like, how does an actor work really? Or how does a voice artist work specifically compared to a different kind of actor?
I'm glad you like that one. Richard Brown asks, what is your favorite part of Zelda and that you weren't directly involved with? So this could be a favorite memory, or it could be something in the game, or it could be an interaction with the fan.
Oh, well, I'd say it's a toss-up between, like, in the games, I really like exploding rocks and finding the gems that are underneath. That's something that comes to mind. I find that such a pleasurable, funny little part of the world. So that's great. And I'd say also some of my favorite experiences have been in real life, absolutely connecting with a lot of fans. I've had some really intense moments with fans this year, and people that I've met that have just been so either in a really vulnerable place or in a really appreciative place, that have just really enjoyed celebrating the game with me. And that is, sometimes you're in a different part of the world when you're doing that, and you're just like, wow, how did I get here? It just feels like pure magic. So there are a lot of moments, a lot of magic moments that have happened because of this game. Hard to single one out.
There's nothing wrong with that, and I'm glad that you've been able to have such a positive experience from the game itself, as with us fans, and hopefully we'll get to have some here with you in the UK at some point in the future.
Yes, perhaps. ...
One day.
Right.
With that being said, I think that's all the questions I can ask from the fans, and I always like to end every interview with a voice actress or voice actor with this question. With your experience in voice acting, and now that you have played such a prominent character, or one of many prominent characters, what do you think is the most important thing for voice acting to you?
I could be really basic and say to love what you do, but I think it's bigger than that. I think with any so I think voice acting, what it really comes down to is if you take the voice off the front of the word and you just say you're acting. I think a lot of people forget that they think it's all about doing funny voices. There's just or changing your voice. It's so much more than that. It's a full body acting experience. And I think to keep that in mind and to know yourself, know your instrument really well, and by instrument I mean the whole body, not just the voice, is if anybody who's aspiring to do this is looking for something to do, again, training and a lot of practice in whatever form that ends up coming is certainly key, so that you can go into a room and offer to a professional company and say, I am ready to do this project and get paid for it and represent your company because I know my instrument really well and I'm a professional. So that's what I would say. Acting first.
I think that brings to a close to our questions. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question today. But if you have any more questions, Patricia, where can everyone find you?
Well, I'm online and I'm pretty active on there. Interacting on Twitter and Instagram. I do have a Facebook page. I'm on there sometimes. But Twitter and Instagram are at Summersett. So summer like the season, SETT_.
Thank you very much for joining us today. For fans, just in case, we are Nintendo Players UK. If you want to find a local group near you, do not hesitate to go to nintendoplayers.uk. We also have a Facebook, a Twitter, and an Instagram. At Nintendo Play or at Nintendo Play UK on Twitter, Nintendo Players UK on Instagram and Facebook, And if you want to join us, come to the website. Once again, thank you very much, Patricia, for joining us.
Thank you, Faz. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hopefully we'll see you soon. Maybe we'll see you soon after. Maybe we'll see you in another game fairly soon.
Maybe.
Or maybe in Smash Brothers. We'll see. In either case, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. You can find me on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and we do live stream a lot on Twitch. It would be super helpful if you do share the video. And as always, and remember, I hope you guys have a very wonderful and happy Faz Day. See you next video, everyone.